Hello, and it's me, Lance Nilsson, of the Outcast Creative, co-founder and the man in charge of the channel. So I was particularly keen to do a gut reaction for this show. Got quite a few gut reactions this week because I'm also doing one for the new spin-off, The Continental, the new John Wick spin-off. I'll be doing that either tomorrow or the day after. Anyone who knows me well knows I'm a pretty big fan of The Walking Dead. In fact, I do actually have a Walking Dead t-shirt, and two of them, in fact, a white one and a black one, and a Walking Dead baseball cap somewhere. But I have a feeling they are in the hands of a second person because I cannot find them. One of them, I think, actually got too small for me. I think the white t-shirt shrunk and also couldn't cope with my COVID belly, to be fair. Now, let's get down to it. The Walking Dead, DARYL Dixon spin-off. I've just watched, literally just watched the first two episodes. I just finished watching episode 2 just now. Put that there. So let's talk about it. Okay, so I didn't know much about this going in. I just knew that it was happening. And the summary of the show is this. The character of DARYL washes up on the shores of southern France. Initially, we don't know how he got there. It soon becomes apparent that he's had a bit of a tumultuous journey getting there. Chaos ensued. He comes across various other characters in southern France, including some good people and some bad people. I think it's fair to say that he clashes with a kind of French Negan type, not quite as nasty as Negan, and then connects with a group of children. The whole first two episodes, which in my head is kind of like a feature-length pilot, really reminds me of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, with DARYL taking on the sort of the Mad Max role, coming across a group of disenchanted kids who are actually looking for something that doesn't exist, led by a particularly articulate and, you know, kind of spicy leader who's full of beans. Of course, he initially doesn't want to get involved with them, but, you know, DARYL kind of has a bit of a soft heart, and eventually he comes to help the kids on their quest. One of the people he meets fairly early on is a nun, or at least she appears to be a nun. And this is your bad guy. I'll talk about cast names in a second. There's an interesting array of they've gone for a very different look with DARYL Dixon. That's the name of the show. I think it could have been called something else, but I guess that's a marketing tactic, so we know what we're getting. These are the sort of French marauders who kind of picket and live off other survivors, as far as I know anyway. They're a bit of a nasty bunch. Everybody seems to be carrying old school weapons, weapons raided from museums, and that sort of thing. So you've got a combination of kind of flintlock style shotguns with bayonets on the end, along with single shot World War I rifles. I actually thought, I think somebody has a blunderbuss in one shot. This is the nun in question. We'll talk about that actress in a bit when I get to cast. And these are really our principals for the show. There are 4 actors. Norman Reedus, of course, playing DARYL Dixon, and I'll come on to the supporting cast in a little bit. First of all, the film was shot in France, which is good because people have tried to double America for France before, and it really does not work. The architecture of the buildings, the nature of the landscape, although bearing in mind that the landscape in southern France is very different from that in the north and even the middle. And I've been to France probably about 12 times, so I do know what I'm conversing about. It's a very, very different landscape. And we do see that. We do see the change from southern France as they start traveling up the middle. Daryl becomes involved with, as I said, some nuns and other characters. I don't want to get into too many spoilers. I'll just give you a flavor of the show. These are the kind of Mad Max, almost, they're not quite feral children, a group of children who were taken under the care of a religious leader, and they're trying to get medicine for her. Now, the basic plot is that there's a kid whose background may or may not be very important, and he may or may not be crucial to the story going forward and to mankind's survival. Don't want to get too much into that. As I just said, I don't want to get too much into spoilers. Good to see Jacob Ironside in the chat. Thanks for popping in. Vex, do I need up to date on The Walking Dead to get into this? No, you do not. No, you do not. The predominant Daryl story thread is not dependent on you knowing all the information of the previous show. By the way, if any of my fellow YouTubers want to jump on this and have a chat with me, let me know. And if I've got your personal details, I'll drop you a link to come and join me on the show. I'm not going to be going on for too long, so it's not a 3-hour commitment like the longest day was the other night. But yeah, if you want to pop on. Oh, look at that. Positive Fandom sent me a super sticker. Thank you, Aram. I much appreciate it. So, yeah, there's lots of things I like about this show. There's a lot of things I like about it. There's Aram's going to pop on. Awesome. Maybe I can tempt Vex Electronica to come on as well, especially as the Henry Cavill restraining order has been lifted. Let me drop Aram. I'm going to email you the link. So you pop on in just a second, and you've watched the show as well. Oh, let me not share that screen. Hold on for a second. Let me take the share down just while I jump on my email. I did that once before on a stream, and I had to go back in and edit it. It was I put somebody's email up on the stream literally as soon as I got off. I was like, my God, I've got to. Vex hasn't seen it. Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, the link is on. I'll when you're in the green room, I'll bring you in at an opportune moment. So let me get the pictures back up. There we go. Very good. Yeah. So as I said, there's a lot. This show's got a lot of merit. They've gone with a new opening credit sequence, which is good. I like the production design. I like the different use of weapons and things. It's not. I mean, it's interesting that one of the places that they're staying at is actually a museum, and I mean, they take the what I would call the most the oldest weapons. There's a Smizer and a Tommy gun in that same museum, and I'm not quite sure why Daryl doesn't take that. I know 9mm ammunition is not readily available, but you would have thought he would have at least boxed up one of the weapons and brought it along. It's one of the posters. They've got to get to Paris, so there's quite a bit. It's a quest, it's a quest story with Daryl helping other survivors, I guess, out of the goodness of his heart. I'll save expressing my full opinion until I've got other people here. Now, there are two narratives. So one of the narratives is in the present, and the other narrative is in the past with our supporting cast member. And we flash back to her story in Paris, and we get a sense of kind of what happened with the supporting cast here. And just before I bring my guest in, I'm just going to talk about them quickly. So the story revolves around not just Daryl's narrative, but also the character of Isabel, who may or may not be a nun, who's played by Clemence Posey. You probably would have seen her in quite a lot of other things. She's got a pretty extensive CV, 57 IMDb credits already. and you have a separate storyline set in the past when the zombie outbreak is taking place, and she is trying to get her sister, who is also pregnant, to safety. Then she's accompanied by, in the present, another surviving nun, Sylvie, who is played by Lalika Blanc Francard. Now, she's not an actress I'm familiar with. She isn't given loads to do, but she's pretty good. I quite like her. I think she's good. So she's in the show as well. And then I'll just shed light on a couple of other people. You have Romain Lively, who plays Quadron, who's like the main bad guy. I feel like I've seen him in something else. And I do watch a lot of French drama. I wonder if he was in Braquo Savages. I may have. Oh, no, that was a movie. Paris Police 1900. Right. Okay. The Tunnel. Yeah, I've seen The Tunnel. Have I seen that White Soldier? That looks like something. Spiralized Source. So I've seen him in 3 shows. Oh, I think I've seen this as well. Yeah. I have seen this. So I've seen him in like 4 other roles. He's a good actor, playing our sort of main villain in the piece. And then there's a young lad in the show. Jury's out on him at the moment. I need to see him doing a bit more. I'm not sure about him right now. I think he might play the role of Laurent, and I don't think we've got a picture. Ned Dennehy turns up in the 2nd episode. He's actually an Irish-British actor, and he's he's an Irish actor that's done a lot of British roles. I think I might have met him at some point, because I have a feeling we were at a screening together and I briefly got introduced to him. Okay, so I'm going to give my guest a few more seconds to finish off her pot noodle. And yeah, fantastic. But yeah, the cast is good. Look, DARYL DIXON, you know what you're getting with Norman Reedus where this show is concerned. You know, we all know the character. We're fairly familiar with the character. Just a bit of background about me as well. I have read the entire series of the graphic novel The Walking Dead from not long, about a year after it came out. I got into it. I think that was around 2004, I want to say. And it ran right up until about 2 or 3 years ago. I think it finished just before the pandemic. I've got them all. They're in the shed. I thought they were actually in the room next door, but I got all my wargaming stuff out the shed and I moved all my comics and graphic novels into the shed because there wasn't room for both. So I was going to bring some and hold up the covers and stuff, but I've got the whole lot. And DARYL DIXON's character is not in the graphic novels. He was a completely new character for the TV show, and as it turned out, one of the most popular. And I do like him. He's had a fantastic arc, so I can see why they would give him a show of his own. I just wasn't sure if he merited a show of his own. Anyway, let's bring in my friend Arm.
Hey, how are you, Lance?
Feels like it was only yesterday that we were talking online.
It was yesterday. How are you?
I'm pretty good, actually. Not too bad. This is my 2nd stream of the day. I did a gaming stream earlier. Oh, just put up my email then. Sorry, I can do that. So let me close that down because that was for sending stuff to you. Yeah, so I just watched the show, and just both episodes of it. I was pretty impressed. I thought it was pretty good, I've got to say.
Yeah, it's a really good reboot, and it's ironic because there've been a few reboots, right? Russ, right, Lance?
Yeah, I'm not Russ. Russ is on Sunday. Lance is on Monday.
Today is Sunday.
Oh God, it is Sunday, isn't it? You had your show with Russ earlier. My God, I don't even know what day of the week it is. But it's not really a reboot. I mean, this is not a reboot. It's a spin-off.
Oh, okay. Well, there have been some reboots of the show, let's say, prior to this one. And I think what's kind of interesting about the reboot situation with this show is that they've been able to push them through regardless of how many people have been watching them. The iterations of shows from the original Walking Dead to different versions. In fact, their most recent one, which is I think something called Walking Dead, the Dead City, does not nearly have the same level of mystery and awe that this version Lance seems to have. This DARYL DIXON spinoff feels quite mysterious. It feels like an adventure. And Clement Posey, you mentioned, she was also in The Tunnel as well. That was the last thing I saw her in, but she was also, of course, in Harry Potter. She's one of the main roles.
Yeah, she's in one of the feature films, I think maybe 2.
Yeah. So I gotta say, they have incredible chemistry, Lance. I haven't seen anything like this before. They definitely feed off one another. And what's great about it is that both characters know that they're not being completely honest with one another.
Yeah, I really liked that twist at the end of the first episode. I mean, I it wasn't that I didn't see it coming or anything, but I like the two narratives. I like the narrative. We went into the present. We kind of see some of the stuff that happened in Paris. Those scenes were really well done. It was really interesting to see the initial outbreak in Paris, and then of course her trying to escape. And she's a scammer. She's a con artist. Sorry, so spoilers. We're going to get into spoilers now. So anyone watching, spoilers from here on out. And she's a grifter with her good-for-nothing English boyfriend. He's clearly a bit of a scumbag. We're definitely going to see more of him because he's listed as being in 4 episodes on IMDb. So he's going to come back. I knew he was going to come back.
Well,
because if they would have killed him at the garage otherwise,
They have that saying, you can't put a good man down. Certainly, it's very interesting, Lance, because it almost appears, and this may not be the case, but in that episode where we find out more about Clement's character, it almost appeared as if he raced after her to find her. But in actuality, you and I both know that he just wanted to get the money, that they both are scam artists.
Yeah, I think he had other alternative motives as well that may come clear later. He may have been using her as a bargaining chip somewhere down the road. Who knows? I mean, one of the things I like about this show, first of all, is that it's shot in France.
Yes.
And it's good that we've got this image up right now because Gale Anne Hurd, who's one of the main producers on this, is a producer who knows her shit. And she understands the meaning of the word scale in film production. And what I mean when I say scale is if you watch The Terminator, which I think was her first, she may have produced Piranha 2, but I'm not sure about Piranha 2, but which Jim Cameron, it was his first directing gig. But she produced Terminator. And when you get the flashback scenes to Los Angeles in the future, well, flash forward rather, there's always a sense of scale with those shots. They're very big, wide shots. There's a lot of layers. There's something in the foreground, there's something in the background, and there's something behind that. And this is an example of that. You've got your characters in the foreground. There's the threat of the trees protecting the castle, and then we have the castle and what's beyond, what's in the castle. So this is a big shot of a real location, I'm assuming, because there's plenty of chateau castles like that in France. I can tell you now, there's one almost every kind of 25 miles if you're wandering about. They're all over the place. And they've made good use of them here. They also had a number of shots of things like DARYL walking along old French aqueducts, and there was another shot that implied that he was on an old road that had since collapsed and grown over. And again, these give the show a sense of scale. They make the world feel big. You have that kind of Fallout Las Vegas vibe of a country that's there to be explored. And I really liked I really liked it. RK is saying, and sorry mate, I haven't been looking at the chat, I dissed the show's writing and directing team for the first episode, so I don't get my comment read, or did I miss something? Let's have a look at this earlier comment. Sorry, when they famously killed off some of the main characters, I could no longer watch the series, but if he's going to be in his own solo show, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think one of the strengths of The Walking Dead was the fact that a lot of characters got killed, because you never knew who was going to survive up until the end of that season. And for me, that's the strength of a show. I mean, one of the reasons why I didn't watch the last Expendables film, and I won't be going to see this one, is because the action scenes are meaningless, because no one ever gets shot. Well, no one ever gets killed, in case, you know, they might want them to come back for the sequel, unless it's like guest of the week. And so therefore, it doesn't matter how many bullets are flying around Jason Statham and Stallone, we know they're not going to get injured, so or killed. So therefore, the action has no tension. Therefore, the action becomes meaningless. Therefore, the action is boring. In The Walking Dead, anyone can go down at any time. So even when, spoiler alert again, Daryl falls in the moat, you know, I'm not completely convinced he's going to get out, even though it's the DARYL DIXON show, because they've maintained a sense of jeopardy that's always there in the Walking Dead series. People always die. So good on them for doing that. Because, again, you know, Gale Anne Hurd, very experienced producer, she understands how you create tension in a show. Angela Kang, who's the producer and the lead writer on the show, understands how you create tension and jeopardy. And the arcs that some of these characters have got are phenomenal. You know, Daryl's had an amazing arc. He was played almost as a villain at the beginning.
Well, it's interesting because he was one of the characters whose life didn't change very much after the apocalypse, because he was still, you know, hustling and having to fight for his life. And with his overbearing brother, they're kind of living in this underworld, underground kind of way of living, where they were just kind of scraping by. So things didn't really change for him. That was his life before the apocalypse. And then the apocalypse happens. He still has to do the same stuff. And it is really funny how, you know, for him, life is pretty much the same struggle. And ironically, it's the same struggle here. And Lance, I did want to ask you a question about how he gets over to where he is. You know, of course, we see him on this boat. It seems like an impossible journey to survive. And then we learn that he was on a much bigger boat with other people. It's really interesting, Lance. They've gone into this much more detail than I thought we were going to see in just 2 episodes.
Yeah, you get a bit of backstory about how he was on a bigger ship. He was there for a reason. There was some kind of falling out with him and the crew. Some people were killed, and they threw him overboard, or at least that's what they said. We don't know whether he jumped overboard or whether he was thrown overboard. Maybe he was set adrift in a boat, because he's tied to a boat when we find him, although I suspect that's of his own doing. I think somewhere down this season, there'll be a flashback to what happened on the boat, and I think we'll see it. I do think that Daryl's character has changed since the beginning. His what he has to do to survive and what he did in the world before are not that different. But what is different about him is that him and his brother at the beginning of the show didn't care about anybody else but each other, whereas because Daryl had never experienced any love outside of that bubble, the brother unit, because he talks about his father and what a horrible man he was and stuff. We've learned about that before, and that's mentioned again in this show. But then he found family with all these other survivors, and he actually grew to care about people. And him and Karl obviously love each other and stuff. So he found things in the new world that he didn't have before: love, proper family, you know, respect, caring for people. So there's a lot of things about him that definitely did change as a result of his personal character arc, even if the things he had to do on a daily basis were the same.
I agree with you.
That's what I like about him.
And if I do remember, it was supposed to be the actress who plays Karl, who was supposed to be doing the show with him. And it is very interesting. I don't know the reasons. I don't think it was like for a bad reason, but for whatever reason, she's not doing the show with him.
She's rumored to still be in it somewhere.
Interesting.
I mean, it's one of the few shows that was able to continue production because of the actors' strike, because it's all shot in France. It's predominantly a French cast. We've got an Irish guy in the second episode, but I mean, you know, there's a couple of other people here and there, but it's predominantly it's predominantly a non-American cast. In addition to that, it's predominantly a French crew. So right now, it's an American show that's being shot outside the current frivolities back in Los Angeles and Hollywood, shall we say. Oh, that's a great still. Woohoo. And that scene is, we kind of know what's coming in that scene.
Yes, it's so good. Lance, they really captured a lot of things that we, as people who've been watching, let's say, The Walking Dead for 10 years plus, for many of us, want to see more complicated stories about what was happening. And they really hit the ball out of the park with this one. It was just done so beautifully, Lance, and certainly still with an air of mystery and fantasy associated with it. There, of course, the big one of the other big, I guess, elements of this show is that this is supposed to be sort of ground zero when it comes to the zombie virus, right, Lance?
I'm not fully I don't remember in the graphic novel that it originated in France. But I think there's something about that in the TV show. I vaguely remember that being mentioned. But I'm not for me, that's not clear whether it was ground zero in Paris or where the thing started. That's not clear to me. But it may well be that.
What did you think about the scene when we do get the flashback of Daryl being not Daryl being on the boat? We see the people who are on this boat and they're talking about DARYL DIXON. And we do see a scene. Actually, it may not have been in the same time, but Daryl comes ashore, and one of his first encounters in France with let's say a zombie, something unusual happens to him during the encounter.
He that's when he ends up standing on the table and he's got the harpoon, and there's about 10 of them, and the harpoon gets stuck at one point, and he has to get his knife out. There's a great scene later where he's using a mace, which is fab. Love that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. You said something unusual happens to him. Did I miss something?
Yeah, he ends up killing one of these zombies, and he gets injured in an unusual way, in a way that I don't think he's been injured before.
Oh, that's right. It's already yeah. Sorry, I see what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we're already doing spoilers, so
Yes.
there's when some of the zombies in France are injured, or when they grab you with their hands they call them burners, I think.
Yeah.
And their hands are like acidic, and it appears that they are toxic and can burn you. Whether they can affect you with the burn or not is not yet clear. But he had a burn. One of them grabbed his arm and burned his arm. I don't think he would have succumbed to infection by now. So I don't think that's a route of infection. But there was an interesting line which I picked up on straight away, which was one of the nuns said, "Yeah, that's one type," meaning that there are other types of different types of zombies. And they did say in this show, we're going to see different types of zombies. There are going to be some strands that are slightly more intelligent. I think there's going to be a strand that moves a bit faster and a bit more like the 28 Days Later zombies. So yeah, we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what they present. This actress was very good, I thought, and I've been trying to find out her name, and I can't see it on the cast.
Sort of like the new young mistress of this school of children,
Yeah,
who are there, and they've been there, I guess, since everything happened. And she mentioned that some kids' parents never came to pick them up after school, which makes sense.
Yeah.
And certainly, this was an excellent episode as well, Lance, because it led to Daryl trying to find, these kids. And that, you're right about the usage of the topography and the buildings. That was incredible what we saw, that moat that was absolutely filled with the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, Lance.
Yeah, they're using a lot of what appear to be, as opposed to building sets, they're using a lot of stuff on location. I mean, as I said, it's all filmed in France. It looks like France. If anything, they could be using more locations, in my opinion. You know, French churches, for example, in the southern part of France have a very particular type of architecture with the towers. And as you go further north, those types of towers change because they become more Norman like. If you go to Normandy, the churches in Normandy have a very particular type of look. And I was in Dijon a few years ago and got taken all around that area, and Lyon and so on, which is sort of very much the middle of France. Lots of kind of rolling countryside, quite a lot of nice castles. And it was really interesting to see that contrast. I've been to Nice and Cannes and the south of France before, and of course I've been to Normandy and Boulogne and Calais and Dunkirk. So the architecture of France does vary quite a bit, and it would be nice to see them encapsulate that a little bit more, those little details, which I think would give the show a lot of credibility. But I think we're going to be arriving in Paris next episode, which for me feels a bit quick. Now there is a shot of are you familiar with the Mont de Michel in I think it might be in Normandy, but it's kind of west of Normandy. It's very similar to St. Michael's Mount, which is in Cornwall.
Is it that it's on an island and the water fills up and it's isolated? It's beautiful.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely it. In fact, I'll try and get it up on the screen. Now, I've seen some posters that imply that we're going to see that in the show. And when you think about it, it's only reachable by a causeway, which at certain times of day goes under the water. And it would be naturally, it would be the perfect sort of place that people would naturally lean towards hiding in or fortifying against zombies, because there's only one way in and one way out. And the defense to defend against it would be, pretty easy. So I think I hope that they got permission to film there, which, by the way, would have been quite the achievement if they did manage to do that.
Oh, and stunning. Lance, this would be stunning. It's very, very lucky to have chosen this as a location. Was it on the map, Lance? They had some map, if I recall, Lance, where at the convent they kind of did some kind of, like, they used string to show their trajectory to Paris.
Yeah, it's I can't remember if it was marked on, because they said they've got groups of people connected with their I guess their nunnery or whatever you might like to call it. That
the order,
there's a chain of there's a chain of different groups that will come and assist. Now I've got onto now I went here on a school trip, and I've got to tell you that it is as amazing as it looks. And I went right to as high as you could get on there.
Oh, wow.
I haven't been back recently, but it's certainly on my bucket list to go back where I can, because as a kid, you don't really appreciate these things quite as much.
Right.
And it's a much wider causeway than there was when I went to it before. When we went before, these car park areas were not here. You just had the one path going towards it. And so you didn't have people being quite as blasé with their parking, because it can get cut off. Well, back then it could get cut off by the water and the causeway. I went in, I think it was 1982 or something. It was a long time ago, but it's a fantastic place, and I think it would be great if they've got, like, part of the show is set here and they were able to film it right. I mean, that would be amazing.
It would be amazing. I think that would be wonderful, and certainly add even more fantasy to this series, which does almost feel a little fantastical in some of its in some of the lore associated with it. As you said, this child who seems to be sort of the future, if you will. And is it because he was born from a woman who was, and you showed a picture of her face, of course,
Yeah.
it's because she was infected and he was born okay, as far as we know?
So there's, I mean, part of the storyline that we haven't talked about is a preacher who used to oversee the convent that Daryl arrives at. He's already turned. He's been bitten and he's turned. But 4 weeks before Daryl arrived, he drew a picture that looks a lot like Daryl and said, "This person is coming and he's going to be our savior. He's going to take us to safety." So, of course, as soon as the nuns see him, and she gets the picture out and says, "This is you," and he's like, "It doesn't look anything like me." It does look a bit like him. I mean, the plot for this, certainly the second episode as well, I don't know about you, but it really reminded me of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome.
Oh, interesting. Very
You had the group of kids who were kind of having to fend for themselves. You had the oldest female one had become their de facto leader. That's exactly the same. They weren't quite as feral because the time gap is not as big as it was between the war and the kids being in those kids in Beyond Thunderdome. But this is, I don't know how many years later this is after the thing, maybe 10 years or something.
Yeah, I would say that's pretty good call on
yeah, I think about
approximately.
10 years. So yeah, and there is that sense of them creating their own community, and by the end of episode 2, that girl has sort of de facto, whether she likes it or not, become their leader. The choices of weaponry are a bit odd. I mean, this Daryl picks up this single shot rifle, which ostensibly the convent was previously a museum, which is implied by the fact that it's got an armory of old weapons and
And it's
halberds and
so
swords.
good, Lance, those cool looking weapons, everything under the sun, all sorts of shapes and sizes. Lance, they hit the jackpot with this one. Feels very authentic. It feels like you had to scrape and find anything. It's so amazingly cool.
I mean, I do like that, and they feel justified. I do have a little bit of an issue with it, which was that they show a Thompson and a German Schmeiser machine gun sitting on the wall, which would be very effective weapons in a diabolical situation. And we're presumed that there's no ammunition for those, but there are ammunition for even the older weapons where the ammunition would be much harder to get. I did think, okay, we're bending the rules of our own reality there a little bit. It's a minor niggle. It's not a big niggle for me. I think this is one of the first zombies that Daryl sees in episode 1, and this is Daryl on his ship. Definitely not. That shot's definitely not filmed in a water tank. And
Right.
this is our villain, who I suspect is going to be our villain throughout the show. There's a few kind of Mad Maxy vehicles. There's a lot about this show that does, we've got people with vehicles driving about, whereas in the American set show, almost no one has vehicles for very long. The petrol runs out. There's no more petrol. Everybody's taken all the petrol that there is. So there isn't like loads of vehicles in that show. There's a lot more people on horses. But here people are still riding around in cars. I don't think that's a problem. I think that's an interesting change of dynamic. I quite like it, actually.
Yeah, I agree too, Lance, and it feels somewhat more authentic of what we envision people would be using as modes of transportation at that time. And even though it's it appears as if Daryl is in a rural area, which he may be, what I like is that they are still dead roaming the streets as they're traveling. Lance, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, at one point they have to let go of their horse because the dead come out. That scene was a bit, again, like, these guys are loaded with weapons. They've got spears. It's not a herd of zombies. It's like 20 zombies.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's kind of, they don't want to risk it because they've got the kid, maybe, but who may or may not be this messiah. And of course, the reason that we know this kid may be special is because he was born. I think the kid's going to turn out to be immune, because the kid was born of a mother who was infected. So he's got mixed blood for sure. So I think the kid is going to turn out to be immune, and the kid may well have the cure for the human race.
Wow.
So I have a feeling that DARYL DIXON is inadvertently perhaps going to produce and provide the cure by protecting and delivering this kid. And that, I think that'll become a story going forward. This is the first zombie we see, the hand coming up. It's a very Nosferatu like shot, which I actually quite like, again, because that's a French vampire, of course.
And you know something, Lance, it is very interesting that you are bringing up this Messiah, and that the opportunity or the possibility that anybody could be immune, and that this could sort of be the cure for everybody, is absolutely fascinating, particularly because you know, when we kind of are looking at this story, and everybody's sort of, this kid, he's been pampered at this abbey, you know, and they've protected him there, and he asks very clearly of DARYL when he sees him, how many people do you think are still out there? Now, I wondered, Lance, why is this child asking him this? Because DARYL says, I don't think there's hardly anybody left anymore. And
they estimate 200,000 of Earth's 67 million French population or something.
So, Lance, what did you think about that, and why is it significant? Let's say, you know, I'm sure a lot of people wonder, you know, during this time, how many people are left out there, but I'm wondering if they mentioned that for a reason. What did you think about this child asking how many people are out there left? And why do you think they even brought that up at this point?
Well, I suppose it's relevant in the terms of who are we going to save, and who's out there to be saved. Darth Plato doesn't care for the savior angle. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to go the way that we think it is. Walking Dead's been pretty good at crushing our expectations at different times in the show. That's its strength.
Yeah.
I know some people think it went on a bit too long, and there were some seasons that kind of dipped with their pace. You see, I did something different when I watched The Walking Dead. I never watched The Walking Dead until the whole show was out.
Yeah.
So I would watch a season. I'd probably do 4 episodes in a day, and me and my ex we actually started watching the show together, funnily enough, and we were both of the opinion we don't want to watch it as it comes out weekly, because then we have a whole week to wait. And I found on that basis you could get disinterested in it. It felt too long. So I was always in favor of I got a lot more enjoyment out of it by being able to watch it show after show after show after show, because there's a lot of cliffhanger endings with The Walking Dead. In terms of the numbers thing, I don't know. I haven't got an answer on that. It may be relevant. It may not be. I think we're going to see a lot more of the bad guys that we've had on the show so far. The guerriers, I think they call them.
Yes.
Or guerriers. I forget how you pronounce it. And I actually meant, before I got on this stream, I actually meant to look up the meaning of that word. I like the fact that there's seeing some of these things you don't always notice in a shot, that there's actually a church on the edge of the beach, which is a very, very common thing in Greece, less so in France. And you can see it's all like overgrown and covered in vines and stuff there. That's quite a nice touch. I like the depiction of how France is now. This actress, by the way, on the left, she has been in quite a bit. Catherine Arditi, her name is.
Mm-hmm.
And she's done a number of French period dramas and this kind of thing, and has quite the resume, and is a experienced French television actress and a bit of a name in France. Got 100 credits on
Wow.
IMDb, yeah, and has done a really interesting selection of work from sort of comedy feature films, French television dramas, guest appearances on TV series and stuff like that. So she's a veteran actor. She'd be a big name in France, a familiar household name, I would imagine. So it's interesting to see that they haven't just got French actors; they've got quality French actors. Names that your average French audience would know. I think the casting actually in this show is pretty strong. But I'm the jury is out for me on the kid at the moment. I'm not sure about the kid. The kid's okay. I need to see the kid do more. At the minute, the kid is a bit perfunctory for me. Darth Plato's saying, shouldn't this be Rick's story? I have to disagree on that because I've read the graphic novels and I know exactly what Rick's story is, and he never goes to Europe. And although the show does diverge from the graphic novel plots, in some cases hardly at all, and in other cases it diverges considerably, they were reasonably faithful about what happened to Rick up to a point, and then they kind of changed the ending with him. Like Karl, for example, the character of Karl in the graphic novel, he survives.
Right.
He does not die in the graphic novel. So when he died in the show, I was really, really surprised that they killed him off. I was quite annoyed actually about.
Yeah, I thought it was a mistake as well. I think
Yeah,
the relationship between him and the father, even if the daughter doesn't survive, that relationship between father and son was really strong. And
yeah.
even during his death, his positive attitude was awful. I said he wouldn't be this positive, he would be really angry that this happened to him. And it just was not a good decision. But for whatever reason, that's what they chose to do. And then shortly after that, Rick was gone. So
yeah, and I mean maybe it's because they knew Rick was going, but and as I said, that storyline was the major divergent from the from the graphic novel. But in the graphic novel, we find out everything that happens to Rick right up till the end, and I mean Rick doesn't survive. He does die in the graphic novel series. Spoiler alert! But we have already said we're doing spoilers. So yeah, so I don't think this would have worked with Rick Grimes yomping around Europe for me. That would have been too big a divergent of the original.
I think
Daryl's not in the comics.
You needed somebody who also could adapt rather quickly. And it's not that I don't think Rick is possible that he's incapable of doing that. It's just that it feels like Rick has more ties to people than Daryl does. Even with Daryl's tie to I can't remember the woman's name all of a sudden, he still managed to be on his own and kind of remain separate, almost as if he relates to her, but he doesn't want to necessarily get too attached to anybody. And I feel like that was the case with him through the whole thing. He does care about people, but he has kept a distance. And, that's really maybe why we haven't seen him with anybody, too incredibly tight. He's always going to be tight with Carol because it's been 10 years, but he likes to keep himself away from certain situations and putting himself in a situation where he feels responsible, maybe because of the way his, the situation with his brother. But I think it is very interesting how this happened. And I don't even know how much this man knows about this country. I don't even know how much Daryl knows about Europe. It's very interesting because of all the characters. I'm not quite sure what his knowledge is of this area even before the outbreak, where some of the other characters I might say, okay, well, maybe this person might know a little bit about the history of this country. He may not know that much. And that's also very fascinating in a sense of someone going to a place where many people want to go on vacation, at least in the United States. But for him, that was not something that he was ever going to be doing. So to end up here is quite a fascinating placement, where I could see Rick and his wife going to Paris for vacation. Like I could see that.
Yeah, Daryl would, unless he was with a chapter of Hell's Angels and they were doing a European bike around, which they do. I met a group of American Hells Angels
I love it.
in Normandy. This is no
Yes.
joke. And they had, they had the Master at Arms and the Vice President patches on and all. I picked up on all those details, and I met them. We were staying at the same campsite as them when we were doing some recce's for this film I was involved in, and the requirement for the membership of the club was you had to be ex-military. And we all ended up talking about Lone Survivor and whether it was realistic. God, they're a fascinating group of people. I could have chatted to them all day. But yeah, I don't think it would have worked with Rick coming here. I also don't think that Andrew Lincoln would have done it personally.
Yeah, Andrew Lincoln, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, it seems like he did, after 10 years, feel like he needed to step away from the series. Now, I have seen Andrew Lincoln in a lot of other shows, but prior to The Walking Dead, let's say, but I understand why he felt he might have to leave this one behind for a little while because he was such a prominent character in the series,
Yeah, I mean, he relocated his family, I think, for the duration. And I've met Andy Lincoln a long time ago now, before he did Walking Dead. And when I heard he was cast as Rick, I was actually quite surprised. First of all, I was surprised that they didn't cast an American actor in that role. And I'm sure loads were considered. I guess Lincoln must have just not. I mean, he's great in the part. He's fantastic in the part. And then there was talk of they were going to wrap it all up in a feature film. And I think the agreement with him was that he would leave the show, but I think he'd agreed that he would come back and do a movie, maybe 2 movies. And I think that idea at some point got cancelled. And I think part of the reason that was cancelled was to do with COVID. I think that was supposed to happen in 2020, that feature film. So, yeah, I mean, will we see Rick again? I don't know. I don't think it matters because The Walking Dead is way bigger than Rick. And it's the same in the graphic novels. There's so many characters in the graphic novels that are great to watch. Jacob said they killed off 2 of his favorite characters in season 7. Tell me who they were. I'm interested to know that. This is another shot that I mean about sense of scale. So, and again, we're sort of showing that the buildings are slightly ruined here. And I think that that's probably a shot of an actual real place. And what they've done is they've gone in and digitally damaged the landscape. It's a great shot. Looks really good.
It does look great, and it does have somewhat of a, adventure feel to it, Lance. And I know that it's dangerous, it's the apocalypse, but it does feel like an adventure. And I think it's very interesting because I don't know whether we've had this feeling in a Walking Dead series before where it feels like an adventure. This is very interesting to me.
I don't think this would have worked if this was set in the States.
No.
And we've already had a spin-off that is quite a bit of it is set in Mexico, if I remember rightly. Which was was it The Walking Dead Rises, or what was the second show
Fear
called?
Walking Dead?
Fear the Walking Dead, that was it. And I've seen all but the most recent season of that. It's quite a good show. It was never gripped me quite the same, but I did enjoy it. This scene, I don't think we've seen it yet. I think this is probably in episode 3. This might be Daryl arriving in Paris, perhaps.
When do the episodes come out, Lance?
Weekly. I think there's the next one's the 24th, so I think it's going to drop like tonight.
Oh, cool. Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I don't know that I'll stay up for it, but
yeah. If it's available, we'll see.
But yeah, I mean, Norman Reedus almost. It's funny as well when you look at him. He feels like he's been this age all his life.
Yeah.
Sort of, slightly haggard, kind of biker hair, slightly graying. That's a great shot, which we've already seen in the show. And yeah, so these kind of shots of him approaching towns, and
episode 3 is available.
You're not quite sure.
It's available, Lance. I'm gonna watch.
Oh, is it? Well, I might watch it right after. If it's...
we could do a watch party and then talk about it.
I don't know how to watch it without people hearing it. On my,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
I
Okay,
got to
no
sort my
worries.
setup for that. Darth Plato has said you're right. They did not kill off Andrea in the graphic novel series. At least if now I'm trying to remember if she did get killed off, it was much, much, much later. It might have even been in last season, but I have a feeling she survives. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure she survives. There's
Mm.
the scene where a very famous scene in the Walking Dead TV show is the
Mhm.
scene with the poles, with the heads on the poles,
Yeah.
and you cut to different heads. And in the graphic novel, the last head on the pole is Ezekiel, the
Mm.
black guy with the dreads who sort of
Mhm.
Marshawn has a bit of a fling with briefly. Now he's still alive in the in I think he survives right till the end of the
Yeah, he
Walking
does.
Dead.
I actually have his 1/6 scale figure because I loved what they did with this character and his look. He looked incredible, so I bought it. I have the 1/6 scale
Yeah,
figure
so
skill.
they killed that pole sequence is different. There's a whole load of different. I mean, there are some of the same heads on it. I think Rosita's head was there,
Mhm.
but there's some people who are there on the poles that aren't there in the show, and vice versa, and whatnot. And but I think the reason that they kept him alive was the actor was quite popular on
Yeah, he
the show.
was. Oh my goodness, and of course, he was having a relationship with Carol, which was
That,
amazing.
yeah, that's right. Which I don't think that happened in the graphic novel.
Mhm.
Um, so now, do we know what that says? Because I was quite curious to know.
Maybe, Darth Plato knows.
Does Darth Plato speak fluent French?
I don't know. Should we look?
I'm gonna have a quick look on Google Translate because I nearly paused it when I saw that. I wondered if it was like a Bad Wolf Doctor Who type thing,
Mhm.
and but I didn't want to slow it down. Oh, okay. It says "Hello, living people." So
Hmm.
Dev Vivant is living people, and I think that might. I don't know if that's Beauvoir or Pouvoir.
It says that it's, pouvoir, and that
Pouvoir,
it's an idiom, the power,
power of the living.
so it's an idiomatic expression.
Yeah,
So,
I think it probably means power to the living, power to those who have survived. I
well,
get.
this is something that's also kind of interesting because, um, Clement Posey's character places, these flyers, or at least she was
Yeah.
placing flyers around, to let people know, um, or maybe to encourage them or for whatever it was. But there's this, maybe there is this desire to find a solution, this cure. Um, and maybe that's what that's about, well, how many people are still around? Can we help them? Can we
Mm,
find a solution to this and end this, terrible era of the Walking Dead, uh, across the earth. So maybe they're looking at this as more of a spiritual and religious, uh, situation. I'm not sure. I have no idea, Lance, but I'm just trying to think of why there would be so much focus on the Messiah aspect of this, and
yeah.
this, maybe they want it to be that sort of focus. Of course, it's probably completely unrelated. That poor little girl on her scooter, it
Yeah, I was going to comment on that. And she says, "Go and be with your mother. She'll look after you." And you just know that kid's not going to make it.
That's right. I mean, she, not that she could take her and put her in the
No.
car, that would never work, especially today, that ain't gonna work,
Well,
but
she'd have
we
to
all know.
take her mother as well, and that would be a whole big delay. And
Well,
yeah,
I think we knew that, Clement's character was a badass when she decided to bring her sister, and she didn't ask the boyfriend if she could do this, and
no, well, she kind of told him that we've got to go and get my sister. I don't know if you noticed, but during the flashback when she's in the club and she's taking a load of cocaine, did you notice what they did with the shots when she was like retching up like that and dancing? Did, did you notice what they did with that?
refresh
How
my
they made it look?
memory, Lance, refresh my memory.
They made her look like a zombie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Let me put it on.
Yeah, that was very, very deliberate. If you look at the scenes where she's dancing in the club, she's just taken the drugs, and
Oh,
she
that's
kind of looks up like
interesting.
that, and her teeth are slightly discolored.
Yeah.
And just the way it's lit, she looks like a zombie in those shots, and it's almost metaphorical, saying in some way some people were zombies before the zombie epidemic, as well as, you know, becoming them afterwards.
Mhm.
Oh, that actress certainly looks very different there. I think that's the lady who plays one of the nuns.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Um,
Cool
I guess
outfit.
that was a. I do like that poster. And
Yeah, I've
that
gotta say that
movie.
the design of a lot of what we're seeing, Lance has done so beautifully. I really like it. I'm fascinated by the usage of these old materials, if you will, the weapons, there's the carriage. It just feels quite more, I'm not even quite sure how to say it, but somewhat more grounded in a sense.
Mm.
And it is refreshing. It's got a fresh twist. But I think that what something that's interesting about Clement Posey's character is that maybe she really didn't have a reason for kind of living, or maybe she wasn't happy with her current life prior to the apocalypse. So, I mean, we can't necessarily say for certain that she was thrilled and happy. You know, she was, as we said, a con artist, but there may be something more to her level of unsatisfaction in her life. And
Apparently, Darth Plato's saying you're going to have that outfit for the next stream.
I'll wear a top that I have that's like that. I will. I have a top that's like
Okay, all right. Well, there you are, Darth.
you'll see the
So
whole thing, but you'll see
hope you're
part of
on.
it.
Hope
I
you're
do
on.
like a lot of what I'm seeing in the series, and perhaps there is a certain level of dissatisfaction of that character.
Mm.
Maybe there is this quest on here for people to find a reason to believe in living and in life again. Um, so you know, it might be some other aesthetic. It might be some specific, you know, this desire to have a meaning in life, and why life has this importance to it. It's because there's something about it that keeps you going and makes you want to live. Maybe she didn't necessarily have that drive as in the life she was living previously. So I don't really know. I mean, I have to think about it a little bit, in the sense of yeah, she does look a little possessed. She looked a little possessed when she puts her head back after kind
Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're watching
of.
those shots, so you mentioned it earlier. Have you seen The Walking Dead: Dead City?
I have seen it, yes.
I quite like it as well. Look, I can't get enough of Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan, and I find the dynamic between him and Maggie, which is as awkward as it should be, because in the show, not only is Glenn's death horrific, but in the graphic novel, it's 10 times more bad than that.
Wow.
And as Jacob is saying, that's when Glenn and Abraham, they both get killed off in the same scene. Abraham actually is killed in a different scene. I think he gets an arrow through the eyeball, if I remember rightly, in the graphic novel. And it sounds like Jacob's read them as well as myself. But I really liked. I like the setting of New York. This whole show felt to me like it's John Carpenter's Escape from New York.
It has a definite feel of John
Yeah,
Carpenter, and I would agree with you on that. I think that, certainly, it is a nice setup. You know, I live in New York, so maybe that's why my opinion about it is a little different in the sense of, um, I like how New York looks. You know, it looks like as if it was an apocalypse,
yeah,
or some neighborhoods that used to look like this in the 70s and 80s, let's say,
yeah.
used to look like that, but they've built up and developed every single open patch of land in New York City. So nothing looks like this in this condition. Maybe when you go to the outer boroughs, there might be one or two plots or something, but they've taken every bit of land and developed it. And now it's got a building on it. And there isn't this piles of bricks that used to be there, but it certainly is, very interesting to see what's going on with in particular with Maggie, who's determined to find her son, which she does find him, right, Lance?
Yeah, I think I've seen 6 episodes of this. You might be slightly ahead of me.
Well, in the 6 episodes, she does come across him, if I remember correctly, and they've only released 6. I think they're gonna release another 6 later on. So,
Right.
you know how they
They
always
find it. They find him in the 6th episode, don't they? Isn't it in the 6th one?
yeah, and it's like
Yeah.
a mid-season finale or whatever you wanna call
Yeah.
it. They
Yeah.
decided to
Yeah.
do with the Walking Dead after a certain period of time where we get episodes in October for the con, and then we get episodes around March, as well. So, it is very interesting that when I say the con, I mean New York City Comic Con, but,
Yeah.
um, it is very interesting that they chose to pair the 2 of them together. Morgan is older now, so he seems a bit mellowed out physically and the character. So it is a very different
Yeah.
approach, but I was so were you not so satisfied when, he was with, you know, let's say the group that is helping him, and they get invaded by the bad guys, and he just goes crazy on
Oh, yeah. No, it's good. Good scene. Good scene. And he
and I
kind
was
of is.
like,
He's
"Yeah."
like his old self, and
He's like
he's
his
still
own self. It's
he
Morgan
still has it.
Unleashed, Lance. It's Morgan Unleashed, and he
Yeah.
brings the wraith down on them, and he says, "Hey, good morning, everybody." Bam! And
Yeah.
it was just like that felt good. I think seeing that revival, the toughness and the just honestly, he was like the extreme toxic male. I love characters like that who are like, "Oh no, you're not going to take advantage of me. Yeah, I know you got me in here, but only one of us is walking out." And I love that attitude. However, you know, Maggie seems quite disgusted with him.
Well, I
And
mean, at the end of the day, I don't think anybody would forgive the person who killed the father of their child right in front of them by bashing them over the head and breaking their eyeballs out their skull. And even though Negan's had a big arc of redemption in a way, that there's still parts of him that are the same, but he has changed. And in the graphic novel, it's the same. He and Rick makes a big. Everybody wants to kill him when they've got him, and they imprison him. He has a trial, and Rick says, "We can't go back to the way things were. We have to be better than we were before, but it's done in a much better way than you have to do better, Senator." Like that Marvel rubbish. It's not like that. And this, you know, he really says, look, he makes a very good argument for why they can't kill him. And you know, and it is kind of, it's paralleled with, are we any better than the zombies, or aren't we? You know, if we are supposed to be better and we're trying to create a better world, we can't execute this guy. And then actually, as a result of that as well, he kind of respects Rick for making that decision. And Negan's character has some really big, I'm talking about the graphic novel again. I mean, it does happen in the show, but not to the same degree. He has some pretty deep conversations with people during the time when he's in prison. There's also one time in the graphic novel where he could have escaped and he doesn't, to prove that he kind of wants to pay his penance for his crimes. So he does have this really big arc of redemption. They've also done a graphic novel about him before he became Negan
yeah,
as well, and how he got there. It's like a separate spin-off, which I keep meaning to get, but I haven't got yet.
I haven't
Um,
read that part of the novels, but I have seen a fantastic, you know, pre-apocalypse Negan, and how he became that character more or less. But also, he saved them a bunch of times, and he's continually become
yeah,
this character that, you know, when the going gets tough, Negan's got your back. He's
yeah.
got their back more than once. I've never seen anybody come through like this guy. This guy is the person you want to go into the dogfight with. He's
As,
the person who's gonna get the job done.
yeah, I mean, he's kind of like Vic Mackey's character in The Shield. He's the one that you want having your back
Yes.
in a bad situation, unless, you know, he's got bad feelings about you, in which case you don't want him watching your back. But I just hope that they don't make down the road. I don't want to see Maggie and Negan get together.
No, 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 God.
If that happens, that show will be rubbish, and I will stop watching it. I don't think they will do that. That would be a cardinal sin in the rules of the universe that they've
Oh
created.
my God. First
It
of
would
all,
be
his wife
awful.
and child are
There's no
still
way she would ever get together with him in a million years. It wouldn't matter if they were the last couple left on Earth. Maggie is never going to kiss Negan, no matter what.
No, but his wife and child are presumably still alive, and that other guy who's hunting, them down and thinks that they're, he's the law. He looks like sort of like a Texas Ranger
Yeah.
character, is bringing the girl back across the water, where there seems like there's nobody out there, but of course they've been approved to go cross the I guess it's the East River or whatever it is, Hudson, whatever water they're crossing. The point being that it is very interesting to see how New York has turned out, and people running up and down buildings and jumping over, walking over the tops of incredibly tall buildings. Like, these things are tall.
Yeah.
And I'd be terrified to even the thought of going up there. But they're gonna milk this series as much as they can, and let's see what happens. Maybe Maggie won't make it out.
There's a lot of zip lining in this show. I mean, some people don't like it. I like it. So of the two shows, let's go back to The Walking Dead, DARYL DIXON for a second. Sure. What would you give this show out of 10 on IMDb so far from the 2 episodes?
9.5 so far.
9.5. That is high. I'll give it a 9, 8.5 to 9. I think 9 for the first episode, 8.5 for the second episode. Still like it. I need to see some more things. There's a couple of things the jury's out on for me. Walking Dead, Dead City, I would probably give a 9 on the first episode. I'd give the show thus far overall probably an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I really like it. There are some things about it that niggle me a bit, but on the whole, I like it. As long as they keep the characters, the bad guys in the city one are not grabbing me so much. I think because Negan is so badass, you can't have him go up another Negan. You have to have him go up against someone who's very, very different. And the actor who's playing the main villain, who was
one chum, right? His previous pal, right?
I don't know how you pronounce this chap's name. Sejeko Ivanek. He was one of the main villains in the first season of 24. That was his big breakout role. He played a Russian, and I mean, I really like him as an actor. Just generally, he was great in so many other shows. He's really good in Argo. He's good in Hannibal. He's got 112 acting credits, and I mean, the majority of them are good pieces of work or good movies or good shows. So I do really like him. But his villain, for whatever reason, I mean, this is a different show with Rosie Perez, but it just isn't doing it for me. And I don't know why. I feel like I need to watch this now and then.
I think part of the reason is that because they had to pick up a previous storyline, and they have a past, that's why I think they needed a fresh character.
And no, they definitely needed a fresh villain. Absolutely. But he's not very physically imposing. He always plays mentally charged villains. He plays the cerebral bad guy, which is great. And I'm not saying his acting's not good. He's great in it. His acting's fantastic. He just is kind of dwarfed by Negan's presence a bit. And I think they could have gone a different direction with the villain. It's not that he's a weak link, because his acting is so good. He still is a great character. But for me, that's the part of the show that's not working as well as the rest of it.
That is very interesting observation. For me, I think that he should not have come back as a character in this series. I think they needed a fresh character, someone we haven't seen before. And that would have been a more interesting storyline. They didn't want to take a chance on bringing in the unfamiliar, but this should have been a series where they brought the unfamiliar.
Yeah, and I don't think that the bad guy in the story really needed to have a link to Negan's past either. That's not adding a lot in the Jeopardy sense. So Well, the summary is we like both of these shows. I think DARYL DIXON's had a fantastic opening. I like what I've seen so far of Walking Dead, Dead City. I think I did a gut reaction to Dead City's first 2 episodes a
Oh,
while
did you? I didn't
I
know.
might have done. I can't. I'm doing so many now. I can't remember. I feel like I wrote a load of notes. Whether I did it or not, I can't quite remember. I definitely wrote a load of notes about it.
I'd love to join you after you watch episode 3.
Well, why don't we do this weekly around this kind of time, and we can have a chat late Sunday night if I'm not. It all depends on which night I stay up mega late. I'm doing a live stream tomorrow on Cannoli Sasquatch's channel.
Oh, wow.
And it starts at 2 a.m. UK time.
Wow.
And normally finishes between 5 and 6. But I love what they do, and it's always a really good gang of guys and girls, and we have a proper laugh, and I love going on his channel. So I'm quite prepared to stay up late once in a while. I mean, it's not like I go to bed before 4 a.m. anyway, so it's kind of normal for me. So that's it. So guys, I'm going to be back. I might be doing a stream tomorrow night. Before I go on Cannoli's channel, I might do something on my channel. So keep an eye out for that. I'm going to be back on Tuesday night, possibly with my gaming stream, depending on how knackered I am from Monday. And then I'll be back at the weekend again, doing a couple of other little interesting reviews. I think I've got Retro coming on the channel, Retro Nerd Girls coming on at some point. And then, of course, on the 2nd of October, I'm going to be on the Critical Drinkers channel doing a special on the horror movie The Thing. And then I've got, I don't know if it's going to be my next industry interview, but it's the next one I've got booked, which is with special effects artist Jeff Farley. That's on the 17th of October. He's got over 150 credits in the world of makeup and special effects. In fact, he's got about 100 in each of those categories. And among the many things he's worked on are 2 seasons of Babylon 5 and Demolition Man. So quite a bit of stuff. Also check out Positive Fandom, the link of which isn't below because I wasn't expecting our own to be on this stream, but I'll do my best to add it in due course. If there's anyone watching who hasn't,
thank you.
And you can check her out also on the Burnett network and a gazillion other places. And she's got a million other streams coming up. Watch the end of my longest day episode.
Yes.
So thanks very much for the people in the chat. Good to see Jacob Ironside in here. We got David Macy's popped in. Keith E has been in. Darth Plato, of course, and a few of the other odds and sods. I really do appreciate you supporting the channel. Keep spreading the love, and I'll see you all again real soon. Bye-bye.